And we're back. Doris Coke Meyer died Sunday. And I got to tell you, to the best of my knowledge, she was our last family member who knew Will Rogers, as far as I know. Andy Hogan, Tom Egbert are here. They're going to be talking about her life and what her passing means in terms of Will Rogers' legacy. Gentlemen, it's good to have you both with me.
Thank you.
First of all, let's talk about what we got here. Tom, you're a volunteer with the Will Rogers Memorial.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes. This is my fourth year, starting my fourth year.
What brought you into it?
I fly an airplane and have since I was 16, and always used to fly up to the Will Rogers fly-in, and probably since about it first started. And every once in a while we'd get to see Coke up there, and I really didn't know who she was at the time, and we got to know each other. And I retired 6 years ago from grocery business, and the biggest thing I missed was people and meeting people.
So this put you back in.
And so being a docent at Will Rogers Memorial put me back into meeting people from around the world.
Andy, what about you?
I've been a historical guide there for 12 years now. I've always had an affinity for Will, of course, being raised around here in Oklahoma, you knew who he was, and people would tell me every once in a while, they'd say, you know who you look like? And I'd say, Elvis Presley. No, you look like Will Rogers. No, he's homely looking, you know. But anyhow, I kind of got interested in him, and then when the gridiron used to be put on by Dave Burroughs and Ralph Peck here in the town, well, a couple of times they'd get me to do some Will Rogers things, and after I would, well then, that's back when Michelle Lefebvre was the director there, and she'd try to get me to come up and work at the memorial. So after I retired, after about 6 years after I retired, I was working at the rec center. Well, we did a little deal, and she said, come up there and work for us part-time. And I said, okay. And
well, we're going to talk some more with both of you in just a second. But first, Coke was a guest on our show back before Christmas. She was engaging, she was articulate, she was in her 90s, and you wouldn't know it. Her mind was just fast as a bullet. And we've pulled a clip that we're going to play for the folks at home. And if you will, take a look at this dear lady and listen to what she has to say about Will Rogers. What do you remember most about him?
He was outgoing, and still he was very modest. And he never projected himself, or pushed or anything. And he'd ask us about our boyfriends and what was going on and how was our team doing. And he was very interested in what we were doing. And we were always there. And then, of course, he was typing out his daily, Will Rogers Says, on his lap, and in the front seat was my dad, and then we would take it to the telegraph office. He'd walk in and pay for it, come out and say, okay, kids, let's go. And we'd go to the ice cream parlor, 31 flavors. and we had to decide, what do we want? Uncle Will's buying this for us.
Doris Coke Meyer. What a pleasure it was to be able to sit and talk with her and to hear some of the stories that she shared with us. I wish there'd been more time. I wish we could have spent more time with her. Gosh, when you talk with her, and you gentlemen know, because I'm sure you both had a chance to hear, she really experienced a lot of history, didn't she?
Yes.
Now, you brought a book along.
Yes.
And this is the one she wrote?
This is the book that she wrote, and I called him Uncle Will. And I enjoy this book greatly for the simple reason it's from a relative's point of view that she was looking at Will. And it just brings it down to earth.
Either one of you ever spend any alone time with her? Coffee?
Yeah, we did, because she came around a lot. She lived here for a while before her son retired. She lived there in the Will Rogers Center, and she actually volunteered and did the same thing that Tom is doing here, was one of her ropers. When she'd be in the memorial, I'd always ask her beforehand when we'd have a school group come in, I'd say, do you mind if I tell these kids who you are? Oh, no, that's fine. And I mean, in 5 minutes, there'd be 20 of them getting a picture made with her. And she loved to talk to them. We talked about her talking on there. it wasn't hard to get Coke to talk because she loved to talk. She and Jennifer, the other gal in the picture there with her on the set, were probably the two that were closest to being like Will, of any relative I've known, because they were both so gregarious.
Well, since you look the part, and since you're absolutely a guide over there, have you learned any rope maneuvers? Or?
I can do a little.
Can you?
I do a little. If somebody can't do anything, then I can beat them. People will ask me, they'll say, can you do any rope tricks, and can you do them like Will? And I said, that's two different questions right there. I can do a few, but no.
Not
I
as
can't
well
do
as
them
he-
like Will did. Not a whole lot of people could.
Tom, what do you see as a volunteer over there when folks come in? And I want to get the same from you in a minute, Andy, but when folks come in, what's the mood of people?
A lot of people have never known Will. It's just like going to any museum. A lot of people from overseas, especially Australia, New Zealand, Europe, they know Will. They know a lot about Will, and they enjoy seeing the items that we have on display there, and some of the documentaries that we show. It's very interesting to see how many people overseas knows about Will.
He traveled extensively, didn't he?
Yes.
And met a lot of folks along the way. And I guess there's a lot to that never met a man I didn't like that he used to say. But what was he used to say prior to that? It was something about you'll probably find me sitting on my tombstone.
Sitting next to it, yes.
Yeah.
And admiring it. But that he never met a man he didn't like.
Andy, what do you find when folks come in? How do they? I don't mean just the children. I mean like their parents and grandparents.
Right. I think most of them are surprised that he did so many different things. Some of them knew him as the movie star. Some of them knew he was a journalist, and some of them knew that he played with the rope. But to be the entertainer that he was in as many different fields, and being the top in so many different fields. I mean, he had the star, for the radio and the movies both, 50 silent movies, 21 talking movies, radio program. Journalist for 13 years, a weekly, for 9 years, a daily
Vaudeville.
Newspaper article. Vaudeville, started out in the Vaudeville, and he went to the Wild West show, or he started in the Wild West shows and then went to Vaudeville, but he was on Broadway. And I mean, to be such an entertainer, that's the surprise most of them get.
You know that story, and which not just a story, it's truth, where he was playing Madison Square Garden and the bull broke loose, and he just calmly threw a lasso around it as it was charging into the stands. I mean, it had gone through the barrier, and he probably saved a few lives with that, but it just launched his career. I mean, Hollywood was knocking on the door the next day almost, and the next thing you know, he was in motion pictures. He was signed to Warner's for a 3-year contract. And yet, when you walk through and you read about him and you look at him in the pictures and the movies, you don't quite get that hard driving, I want to be an actor type from him. You know what I'm saying? It was a totally different gentleman that we hear about.
To go a little further on what you said about the Madison Square Garden, Lucille Mulhall was supposed to be the roper on that steer. It breaks through the fence, and another man that helped him to corral that steer was a fellow named Tom Mix. Well, he and Tom Mix ended up working together. They worked with different Wild West shows, but they combined them sometimes to make a bigger one.
Now, Tom was from Oklahoma, wasn't he?
Right. Well, he part of the time.
Part of the time.
Tom Mix was a specimen that the women liked. like 6 wives. And one of them happened to be in Dewey, Oklahoma, and that's when he ended up as the town marshal there. But he and Will ended up both making movies. They ended up both being buried in the same cemetery after they were killed in California. Tom 5 years after Will in a car wreck. But Will was driven. Women call it hard-headed, but men call it driven. Whatever he was going to do, he was going to be successful at it. Never quit practicing that rope, whatever it took. Even though he didn't use a script on the radio or when he went out on the stage, he knew what he was going to say.
He was also a big supporter of aviation, was he not, Tom?
Absolutely. One of the biggest back then.
And that was really unusual, because aviation was in its infancy, was it not?
Right. Amelia Earhart, Lindbergh, all those people.
And Wiley Post, his pilot, who died with him in that plane crash in Alaska, Wiley was working on equipment nobody really knew about at the time. To allow pilots to sustain a lack of oxygen, the helmet, the hoses, and all that. I mean, he had his own thing going too. I mean, between the two of them.
It really was our first spacesuits.
Well,
when
I tell
you
you
see
what,
it, and that's really it. It's just our first spacesuits.
I wish Coke were here right now to join in this conversation.
Absolutely.
God love her, she was an incredible person, and I want to thank you guys for coming by and sharing a little bit about her.
Thank you.
I'll probably see both of you down the road.
Okay.
Thanks again,
And I'd like
gentlemen.
for you to have this book.
I'll take it. You think I won't take it? I'll take it. Well, coming up, AAA wants you to know more about safe driving. Don't you grin at me. We'll talk about that when we come back.